Okay, so for this next one, it's really just repeating the same steps, but just showing you, let's say you find a different structure and instead of like a light background, it's got like a dark gray background or something. You kind of really just troubleshooting ways to get the information you need. But again, I'm just showing you in a different color so you can kind of see, how to troubleshoot it. So gray is actually an easier color, I think, to start with because the highlights are usually the harder thing to pick up, and the shadows are easier. And also, the shadows you can really create those from scratch if you want, especially if it's a simple structure like a tube or a pouch. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of repeat that. So, actually, the first step is always easy to make it like change it to grayscale. So, image mode, grayscale. I did the selection first last time, but just so you don't forget, it's not a bad habit to get into. And then again, now I'll start doing the selection. W is the quick key for the selection tools, and again, Shift and W toggles between them until you get the one you want, which is the quick selection tool. I'm going to select my object, and I can just do this part for now. I think I'm just gonna stick with this part for now because this cap can stay gray, and we can do that separately if we want, or just change the color of it. So I'll do that. But I'm gonna go to quick mask just to see how clean this selection is, and it's pretty good. Again, you can clean it up. I'm not going to spend the time to this time because it's in that first part. And then I'm going to create my design goes here folder, and with this selection I'm just going to put a mask on it, and we have that. And then I'll double click this, and I'm going to name it just a ridge like last time. And then I will, and all these steps, it doesn't necessarily matter which order you do them in as long as you do all of them. But I'm going to add a curves layer, and this time, because it's already dark and the highlights are kind of standing out, it's easier to kind of see like what the highlights are going to look like, the shapes of the highlights. Whereas on the white one, I had to like pump up the contrast to kind of pull out what highlight shapes could be. So I pulled this up a little bit, and and you can add more than one point to your midtones too. So if I want to just start with one point and add another one, you can mess around with these and see like where you want to get with this highlight. And that's pretty good. And what you're trying to achieve is getting some kind of black in the background, because basically anything that is like not black is what you're going to select with the white. So the more black you have in the background, the more realistic it kind of looks for the highlights. And also remember, you can always kind of screen back the opacity on whatever highlight you do create. So I kind of like this right now, and that's a pretty good level. So I'm going to go to my channels, and I'm going to command click on the little thumbnail, and again that's going to select all the white, including this outside for now, but again we're going to mask that later, so that doesn't matter. I'll create, if you close the folder and then go to create a new layer, it will add it outside on the top. And then I will fill this with white. Again, white is my background color, so command delete will fill it with white. If white was my foreground color, option delete would fill it with white. And I'm going to deselect it, and I'm going to command click on this mask to launch that selection, and then I'm just going to put that mask on this, and I will mask out that, and I'll name that highlights. And again, just hiding everything so you can see I have the highlight layer, and I'll do what I did earlier, create a new layer and just fill that with gray, so you can see I have my highlight layer, easy peasy. I'll turn that off now because I actually want to go back now, and I'm going to hide this curves level, and I'm going to add a new curves level to pull out the shadows. So use this little black and white cookie icon, curves, and then I'm going to go the other way this time and try to make the background kind of light. And again, you can drag 2 points and mess around with it and see, maybe see what you want to do with it. Play around. Maybe the shadows are kind of like more in the middle. If you want to get them more on the sides, maybe you just play around like that. That's pretty good. So I kind of like that level of detailing for the shadows. So now this is something that is different from what we did last time, because last time it was a white structure and I didn't actually create a level for the shadows, right? I kind of just used that original layer. But this time I'm going to have to go to the channels and do the invert of the selection, right? So I know if I hit command or hold command and click on that, it's going to select all the white. But what I really want to select is the opposite of that. So once I have that selection, this is something we've done a couple times, I'll hit Command Shift and I, and it will invert that selection, and it will be all the grayscale, all the darker parts. And so now I'm going to create a new layer, underneath this highlights, and I'm going to name this shadows, and I'm going to actually fill this with black. Now to get your default colors, quick key is D, and that will give you black and white. Black is the foreground color. So I'll hold on Option Delete. It fills it with the foreground color, and then I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to hide this original and hide the curves just so you can see with my gray background. There's my shadows, and there's my highlights, and anything I put in here will ultimately kind of show. But because I want to keep that cap, I'm going to put a mask on the shadows too. I'm going to re-show this, which is fine for now. There's nothing kind of blocking it. So it's kind of just appearing like, the highlights and shadows are on top of this image. But once I convert this back to CMYK, again, don't merge. And then we'll keep all your layers together and intact. And then if I add a color into this, again, I'll just do blue for now, and just fill this mask. I have my shadow layer, my highlight layer, and now I can go, choose linear burn, and maybe this is overlay, and I can, mess around with the opacity of these to make them feel a little less harsh. And actually this shadows layer is kind of looking a little muddy when it's a gray, so maybe instead of making it gray, I'll make it like a dark blue, so it's kind of more realistic. So I'm actually going to just pick a darker blue color. And remember, if you want to change the color of a layer, you can click the checkerboard, and then because it's the front color, Option Delete, and and then it's looking a little bit more realistic, like what the shadows will look like. And we can still play around with these, but this is only affecting the cap basically, and you can continue to kind of mess around with the color that makes up that shadow, and even with different blending modes, maybe different ones feel better. I don't know if color burn actually feels better for this, if you want it to be like really picking up the color of the bottle. So you kind of play around with these things and get it to, a place that you are liking with your colors and stuff. Sorry for the bell. And last thing I'll just remind you is how you can use Channel Mixer to like add or change colors of things. So like for this cap, I'm going to just make a, I'm going to click on the original layer here, and I'm going to make a selection of the cap with my my quick selection tool, quick key W or Shift W to get to it. And always remember, you can go to select and mask and kind of like, put on edge detection and clean up the selection, smart radius. There's these other options. You could feather it a little if it's a lower res file. And then you hit OK. And then now if I add a channel mixer, I go into channels and see, okay, let's see, cyan, magenta, and yellow. It's really got like a bunch of these in the cap and a little bit of black there. So kind of actually, even though it looks gray, it's made up of cyan, magenta, and yellow. So if I wanted a blue cap, I'll go to yellow. I'll take the yellow output channel, and I'm going to take the yellow out of it. And that's like starting to kind of get there. And then it actually looks really kind of purpley, so maybe I'll take out some of the magenta. And then the cap is kind of blue. And if I want it to be like, a darker blue, I can either add more contrast, or I can kind of go I can go into the cyan channel and like add more of those, the values I took out of the magenta and the yellow. If I really want it to be dark blue, I can kind of start adding from the constants of some of these channels, or maybe even adding back some magenta, adding some black, again, from the channels that we know we have the information. So it's kind of, you play around with that and get it to be the color that you want. And that's pretty much it. So that is, again, just reviewing the channel mixer. And these are all things you can turn on and off. I can turn these highlights and the shadows on and off. And then, again, I can copy a design into here the same way we did on the pouch. And that's it. So just another structure there. And that's it for this week. Thank you.